got you, Zeb. That's it! I got you, Zeb. I got you, Zeb. I got you, Zeb. I got you, buddy. I got you. We're gonna pull you through. We're gonna pull you through. I told Mom I'd get you home. We need a sergeant over here! Zeb. Zeb. It's me, Zeb. It's Amos, Zeb. Come on, you can. Come on, Zeb. Come on, Zeb. Come on, Zeb. killed my brother!
tried to reenact the scene from the Battle of Shiloh in 1862 in a place called Pittsburgh Landing, Tennessee. 2 days of fighting. You'll have to leave the spotlight on, I think. 2 days of fighting. The first day, the Confederates took the day, and two brothers were pulled. We reenacted two brothers being pulled from the midst of battle. 2,477 casualties in 2 days. And from that time on, soldiers who were engaged in the rest of the Civil War said it weren't near fighting as bad as Shiloh. And there was a Union line where the fighting was so intense that the Union line folded back on itself. And it became a tense frenzy of combat, and it was later referred to as the Hornet's Nest. These two brothers, imaginary brothers, though there were many brothers in the war, were in the middle of the hornet's nest. General Grant was a seasoned veteran of battle, and it says that after the first day, which the Confederates won, he couldn't stand to hear all of the men lying in the fields at night groaning. And so it says he went a considerable distance away and sat down in front of a tree. And his good friend William Tecumseh Sherman came up to Grant when he was sitting there. "We've had the devil's own day." And Grant was just kind of sitting there. Lick him tomorrow, though. And they did. The next day, Buell came up the river with reinforcements, and the Union took the second day. But the first night, it was said that bodies were so all over the place that you could walk in any direction and never touch the ground. The ground was soaked with blood. And the men in the fields who were lying there through the night groaning, that were still alive, were groaning for water. And one record says that God was merciful because he sent a falling rain. Now, one of the gruesome things that I had not known about till I studied this or did some research into it was the same night the hogs from, I guess, nearby farms were feeding on the dead in the fields. Many of you at your tender age, where you're full of ideals and dreams, and that's why militaries around the world hire people your age, or recruiters after, because when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, you have all these dreams, and it's a tender, precious thing. But there's some things that I've always felt burdened in the times that I have been here, just to make sure you know. Is that it's not a game out there. It's not a game. I have sat in chapel after chapel with brothers, just like the one re-enacted here, who were as dear to me as I tried to convey here. That's why every time I do this scene, I'm moved, deeply moved by it, because I have done the same thing over my brothers who I sat with in here. Day after day, week after week, month after month, semester after semester. Brothers that I loved, and I saw the grace of God moving in their life. Many of them I hold in my heart and my prayers, like I did said. As they were basking in His presence, which is so unique and rich and full here, just like you, and they had dreams of when they went out there, but they had no idea that it's a minefield out there. And I think I know one reason why. Because I don't think at our best we have grasped the glory of this sacred trust that has been given to the church. The horror of it, the terribleness of it, the glory of it. And one way the Lord conveyed it to me for camp season last summer was this. I was in the shower as a young man, a newlywed, before we came back here as married students. And I was agonizing over the severity of hell. And I got in the shower that morning, and the Lord spoke to me as He ever has. He said, "Michael, you only question the severity of hell because you do not understand the severity of Calvary." And we have liberal preachers and liberal theologians who on this side of it, oh, it's just a state of mind. Oh, it's just a separation from God. And they belittle the consequence of rejecting the glorious one. But you see, you cannot reduce this, beloved, without reducing this. The consequence must be proportionate to the magnificence of the victim. And if you reduce hell to something less horrible than it is, you've just reduced His magnificence. And God in His wisdom has entrusted this to us. It's not a game. It's not a club that those outside the kingdom have an option whether or not to be part of it. And if they don't become part of it, well, they miss out a little bit. No! The consequences are so horrible that I've asked the Lord, isn't 5 minutes, Father, enough in this place? Wouldn't that be enough for anyone who had rejected Him? But we don't understand how magnificent He is. That the consequence for rejecting the sacrifice of the Son of God is so great. And knowing, the wicked one knowing what the consequence is better than the church does, he understands. Why do you think he comes after Elim students? Because of time, I'm not going to go through the scriptures, and I have many from the beginning, Old Testament and New, of individual and groups whom God directly took out because they didn't hold the sacred trust in the proper way. But I can reiterate, brother after brother who were close to me, sitting in this room like you, had no idea when they left here they would be decimated and wiped out with no hope of recovering as far as they were concerned. Because why? It's not a game. It's not a club. It's an eternity. And there's no other option. Brother after brother after brother, some tighter with their wives than I was. I envied their friendship that they had. 6 of us in the married dorm used to commute to UPS, and we figured that we went around the world 1.5 times together commuting. 6 of us lived in that building, 1 lived off campus, and we used to go to UPS every night after school in the evening. And there was a couple there. If I said their name, the staff here, many of the staff would say yes. I know them. I remember them. Beautiful sons. And that couple looked tight, and I didn't have the friendship with my wife then that they did. And then one day, she decides to go back to her high school boyfriend. Another one, a dear friend who I saw the grace of God melt this man. If I said his name, the staff would know it. Dear to me, and he would weep with the grace of God. But he went to a Christian psychologist who told him, because he felt pressured to marry his wife, that he needed to be happy. So he left his wife and 3 beautiful sons. I was on staff at a church in Ohio. Again, many of our staff would know. A man who was more gifted and more powerful than me, by far. I used to cling and hang on in my insecurity to his security because he had faith. We both got fired together because we put our finger on an issue that a couple years ago the trustees rose up and brought that, because of those issues, brought the leadership down. But that was 10 years ago, and my brother has never recovered. Were we angels? No. One guy left here and he said, I'm tired of living for others, I'm going to live for myself. And I meant to ask Doug to stop the tape for this part, because this isn't anybody else's business but ours. And you can, my brother. Died of AIDS. 3 that I know of, that I have heard over the years, gone to homosexuality. You need to be stunned. I want to bring you down, but not to despair. I want to bring you down to brokenness, where it won't be some trite saying you say, but you'll be clinging to the horns of the altar, knowing that you're nothing and will do nothing without His grace. I've been terrified for years for myself. Lord, I don't feel like it's an issue of if when I fall, it's a matter of when. I've been so scared. Joe Nettleton told us in September, ministers dropping like flies. Something in the Elim Herald last week or so. Some big name fell. I don't know who it was. I don't care. I mean, of course I care for them, but you know, it doesn't matter. The issue is they're Elim brothers. They're Elim brothers. One that I was a buddy with here my freshman year as a single student. I asked him a few years ago, would you send me one of those papers you wrote for the Gospel of Matthew class? I remember what you wrote it on, and I want to see what you said because it interests me. Well, I called him. And now he is very mocking towards those who embrace the full gospel and have a conservative view of the scriptures. And very liberal. Lost his wife, who was a student too. incident after incident. And it's not just my era. I can't believe it. I feel every class needs to hear something like this. And I'm not saying I'm the only one who does. I'm sure I'm not. But there's something about this place that it's an ache. It's an ache. I don't like to minister at Christian schools, Christian institutions, because there's something about it that it just brings me down. Because you have something very, very special here that you don't know how many people out there would do anything they could to be here, but they cannot. And you have the privilege. But there's this thing that I see in Scriptures and in experience all the time. When you're close and close to the holy things. All the time, familiarity breeds contempt. Now get this. In my understanding of the Hebrew, and I was with Found for, I and 2 other students, I believe, were under Found for a semester. So that makes me a Hebrew expert. But something that scares me to death is that the Hebrew word for contempt can also mean to take lightly. To take lightly. And I constantly tell our children in kids' church, I'm finishing up my 14th year of pastoring kids, if you treat him lightly, he shows up lightly. And it's very easy to treat him lightly in a place like this. I understand you feel like you're glutted with God. He's everywhere, everything you do, you're just stuffed and you just need to go play a video game sometimes. I understand that. But you see, when I come, you can smell that thing, whatever it is. You're around it all the time, and you just, I don't know what aspect it is of the human nature, but something about the flesh, the human nature, unless it's dealt with, it's just like a creeping, oozy, gray kind of thing that comes over people who are not letting what is here for your sake seep into you. If it does not seep in and break you, you get gooey all over. And then your worship, as one person said, gets cookie cutter. I'll never forget it. You have the religious sayings, but you look like somebody out of touch. Because they don't come from the heart, they're off the top of the head. I'm just saying to somebody who's out there, and just from the outside. And it's not just here, it's churches too. And it's something that happens in Scripture, where God never changes the prescription of how to hold dear and hold on to His holy things. No matter what's happening around, He never changes the prescription to hold Him reverently. And it's something that scares me because you don't know when it's creeping over you. There's so much to cover. I had a 7-page introduction. And not even before we got to the text. But there are so many students, and I had a list of students it just kills me. And here's how a children's pastor thinks. This brother that got fired with me. I was laying on my bed in my bunk at a family camp years ago. And I saw a scene. I was praying for him. And I saw a scene from Bambi. And when Bambi's running from the hunters, and often your attacks will not come from unseen forces. Many times, the ones that take ministers out are the forces of wickedness using flesh and blood. But when Bambi goes to leap from the hunters, you hear a gunshot, and he hits this rock ledge. And he's stunned and he can't get up. He can't believe they got him. And all of a sudden, this big lord, elk of the woods, his father, he comes over him and he says, "Get up. You must get up." Bambi got up. My brother didn't. Not yet. He got up. We have teachers over here. Do you know that they are not here for the money? Did you know that? They are not here for waterfront property on Elim Pond. They're not here because they have monetary stock in Elim. They have all their stock in you. All their stock. What else do you think keeps them here? Is vision from Him for you? You go, they go. They make more money elsewhere. You're their stock. And they're investing everything in you. But I found something with our dear staff, is that they come to you 83% of what a kid learns is what he sees. The staff comes to you and they give you tools. Oh, the tools, how they've helped me make it through the years. And don't think because you're working with kids that you don't get your head blown off. You get your head blown off. They put weapons at your feet, don't they? They teach you how to fight out there. They do everything they can to ensure that you know how to walk in the fullness of Him. The fullness of Him. That you carry yourself in such a way that, as one group says that the Lord is moving, don't let the dove fly away. They can only do so much. And then you know what happens? When you go from here, it's you and God. Not that they'll always be here for you. But God says, all right, my son and daughter, I have given you all I can give through them. Now come with me. Come with me. And you don't know how the words that I've heard from staff have kept me in the evil day. That's why I was afraid, oh God, is this reenactment going to be cheesy and hokey, and Christians are horrendous with hokey drama. But that's what I feel at times when God brings you into seasons of warfare where you're hanging on by your fingernails thinking you're going to fall, or they attack your family or your children or your church. And you will go to churches where it'll be like that in the Spirit. Things are flying all over the place. And you're tempted to be part of the problem. Where you have to defend your pastor when his attackers are right. But they're still wrong. When they attack him, they're wrong. And many have sided with the rebellion. You're a casualty. Could I have 3 students just come up here and face the front here? One more, please. You can get up on the ledge here, please. Thank you, Steve. Just up on this level and face that way, okay? You get up here, buddy. Thanks. And you can go ahead, Doug. I'm sorry. The Bible, everyone in here is very familiar with the phrase, the mark of the beast. Did you know that God marks His people too? It's awesome. Ezekiel 9:4, Genesis, even when He marked Cain. Cain was bad news, but God says, don't touch him. Oh, well, who says? Look at his forehead, or wherever it was, the sea. Ezekiel, go throughout the city and see those who are faithful, and mark them. I will preserve them. Now, the Spirit of God is our seal, a seal of our guarantee of redemption. And you know, I believe that Elim has a seal. I just do. You'll always have a seal of Elim on you when you leave here. And the bonds that you make with your brothers and sisters here, it never goes away. If you haven't seen them for years and you connect, there's always that common bond seal that comes here. But let me tell you something. I believe, because of the nature of this place, and the life that's imparted, and the wisdom that's imparted, to whom much is given, much is... I believe something else you're sealed with or marked with when you leave here. And many students don't seem to get this. Sometimes your leaders will be the ones who rip you up. And God lets them do that so that you will not rip people up when you're a leader. Scene from Braveheart. William Wallace was fighting this guy in a joust. He gets wounded with an arrow in his shoulder. He's sitting on the ground stunned. He takes his helmet off, and his unknown opponent takes his helmet off. It was his brother and friend. It was interesting that after I got nailed by a leader that I was doing everything I could to defend, he came after me. I was so stunned and crushed. It was one of those times that many walk away from it all. And believe me, ask my wife, I'm not Mr. Wonderful. I don't know what else I'd do. I was decimated. I didn't know what to do. I wept before my wife. I didn't know what to do. I talked to my children about it. Always protecting the man, though. On the ground with an arrow in me. The key to making it, young people, when you go out there, is no matter how raw the deal is, and God will send you raw deals, is to see God behind it. And many have not gotten up because they haven't seen it. This church burned in Ohio. I'd like to believe my buddy and I were 90% right. Let's say 80. I got fired once, and then they hired me the next day, but they didn't hire my buddy. But then in a way, a year and a half later, they let me go again. I was bitter. When I went to my next church, I left a staff meeting. You know what the Lord said to me? You haven't forgiven them, and I can tell by the way you talk about them. But God, what about them? What about them? You haven't forgiven them. I had to go up to the sanctuary, which was upstairs, and deal with me. And you know what? God brought me to a place. Thank you. I needed that. I needed that. There's so much detail. We haven't even started yet. Please, thank you. Please do not forget. When you go out of here, you're getting these. And here's another scene from a movie. I'm very careful the movies I watch because I'm so easily affected by them. But if you find those that inspire you, watch them. The end of Saving Private Ryan. This special unit made me think of the teachers. They go behind enemy lines to save the Ryan guy. They laid down everything for the Ryan guy. And they were getting picked off by the Germans for the Ryan guy. And in the end, the leader, the captain, he's wounded. He's leaning against a jeep or something, and there's a tank coming at him. Just about dead, and he's just shooting his gun into this tank, and you hear tink, tink, tink. And it looks like, wow, the tank's going to waste him or run over him or something. And all of a sudden, and a tank killer comes and wastes the tank. Yes, American planes. But as he's leaning up against there, and this makes me think of the teachers, and it's the most powerful scene in the movie. And the man they came to save, that they did everything for to protect, and they would tell him, you stay here and don't you move. I will go fight for you. You stay here. Because their commanding officer said, get him and protect him. As he lay there dying, he looked at the man, the Ryan guy, and he just looked at him, and he thought of all they poured in to get this guy. The battles, the self-sacrifice. And he just looks at him as his last words, and he looks at him and he goes, earn this. And he dies. And I don't know if the teachers have ever thought in that way, but I think of that for them. That if they would say, yes, Michael, I can see that. That's something about how I feel about the students. I've laid down for you. Now go out and earn it. Earn this. That's their greatest reward. That's their greatest reward. I was going to tell you before we started, I heard that you've had some speakers lately who went way over time, and I could tell that didn't make you happy. And I didn't even get to the text yet. I was really crying out to God. There's so much. I've been in these I've been in 1 Samuel like especially chapter 2 for 4 months. That was the text. And maybe I can condense it very quickly, but I want to tell you this. If you want to leave at noon, leave. And I won't think any less of you. I know you can only take so much of things, and nothing's worse than have to listen to a speaker who's not blessing you. And nothing's worse for a speaker than have to talk to people who are not appreciating you. So we both win. So I just want you to know that if you feel that, and it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, do you hear me? But there are some maybe that Father wants to hear what's going on here, because you may be on the verge of going out there and getting your head beaten in. Here's the key, and I'll try to, oh, this is a bummer, but here's the key. There's Samuel, and there's Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas. All were part of the commonwealth of Israel. All were of the tribe of Levi. All had the special rank of being near the holy things all the time. Well, you see, in those days there weren't any visions. They were rare. Do you know why? I never knew this till I studied it in this last season of my life. It's because Eli was unfaithful. Excuse me. And God won't speak to unfaithful leaders. Samuel was the one. It says, as Eli was lying down in his usual place, and that's the curse, is when you are not faithful, there are no visions. And when you have no vision, you lie in your usual place. And churches all over the place are stuck in that. Lying down in your usual place. And when you do that, you take the people with you. But you see, Samuel says he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. You see, you will be an Eli or a Samuel. Samuel's the one who, because of who he was and how he responded to God, and he was one who opened the doors of the house of the Lord. But too many leaders closed them. It was because of who he was. And the contrast is so powerful, beloved, where it's like 1 Samuel 1 through 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 11. It's about Samuel and how he came to be. And the miracle and Hannah's godliness and Elkanah's godliness. And all of a sudden in chapter 2, verse 12, it's almost like the curtain closes. And the pretty birds and the blue and the yellow and the sky, when the curtain opens back up, it's black and orange and dark. Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of Eli, were wicked men. Moffat says they were depraved creatures. They cared nothing for the Lord. Yet they were the priests of the Lord, around the holy things all the time. Their father was the high priest and judge of Israel. And yet it says in verse 25, they would not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the will of the Lord that put them to death. They crossed the line. I think that gave me some understanding, because I had been so burdened for this phenomenon that it doesn't just happen here. And I was thinking the other day, I was looking at this again and again, Lord, why is it that it happens so much to our school? Maybe that's a good sign. Maybe we are dangerous. Because I know many students have walked out of those doors and done tremendous damage to the kingdom of God. Tremendous damage. So we shouldn't be surprised that he wants to take you out. Which class every year is always the biggest class? Freshman class. Which class is always the smallest class? God never ends up with what he started with. Another scene from Saving Private Ryan. The very beginning, the D-Day Normandy invasion. They're coming up on the Normandy beaches. And the drawbridge drops down. And all these soldiers who were young and had trained for years in boot camp and over and over and over again, they're all huddled in this thing, and the drawbridge drops down. And here we are. We're into battle. And most of them are decimated. Don't even get out of the landing craft. And I always ache for... I know there are legitimate reasons why some don't come back. Why I understand that there are other things for students. I understand that. I didn't used to understand that. But how many are taken out before they get out of the landing craft? See, God will weed us out. He knows He knows which one of you are sincere here, which one of you are coasting and playing games. He will weed you out. He may be doing you a favor, because if He doesn't weed you out, it's a lot harder when you get taken out. And I have seen in the Scriptures that God directly takes people out. Satan, with permission, takes people out. And then it just seems we make dumb mistakes. That if we would yield to God, He'd redeem. But many times the students, we make dumb mistakes. And it seems there are 3 different ways to get taken out. And you know what? One of the glory of the gospel, and my understanding of it, is imputation. Righteousness is imputed from first to last. It never diminishes. It can't get any better because it's His. So that's why I don't worry, in the good sense of the word, a whole lot about being taken out of the army. But I worry all the time about being taken out of the action. You see? And many of these brothers and sisters that I mentioned, I'm not saying they're lost. But you know, there's more for us than just being in the army and hanging near the back. My mother-in-law sent me a birthday card last month, and she said in it, the Lord was mentioning to her, when the things that you're involved in and that you're psyched about and that make you tick and you get up for, how much eternity is in it? I told my son Chooch last summer, when he was really not knowing what to do with the summer, and I really needed him, but I didn't want to force him. I wanted him to hear from God. But I told him this, the whole world's going to hell, and you're 19. If you were 74 and a half, I'd think about it, but you're 19. And how many of us would do anything to be 19 again, to get back that precious age? Not a game. It's not a game. And you're key to making it, because you will go down. And Mike Brecht, a dear friend of mine who was connected with the Elim, but he hasn't been a student here, he told me this, and I'll never forget it. All success with no failures makes for poor leadership. All successes with no failures makes for poor leadership. If you can see in your most tragic heartache and crushing when you go out of here, if you can see God in it, you'll make it. Many have not and have gotten bitter, have left the full gospel experience, have left their spouse, and maybe walked away from God. The man in the room next to me when I was a single student here committed suicide. Not a game. Not a game. Will you be a Samuel, or will you be a Hophni and a Phinehas, or an Eli? Always around the holy things, somehow it's not working. They can only do so much for you. Now it's you. I don't have answers to how to make everything work right. The only thing I've found for myself in tragic church stuff and personal stuff is to stay broken. I don't know what else to do. I really don't. I don't have any magic answers. Well, just confess it. Yeah. It don't work. Not for me. Now, when the Spirit of God comes in you and says to, then it works. You know what I'm saying? The formulas don't work. But I have found when I really thought I was slipping away for good, and I was a mess laying out before God, and didn't know what to do or who to turn to, that's when He comes. And you know that the excellency of the power is of Him. I didn't even touch, really. I'm just trying to pour my heart out, asking God all the stuff, Father, the pages of details. Lord, I want so much to touch them with what You want them to hear this morning. It's so frustrating, but I trust that You're hearing this. If you're a Samuel, you'll open the doors of the house of the Lord. And people will come to you and want to follow You because of who You are. Where Hophni and Phinehas, they oppressed the people, even stealing God's portion from the sacrifice. Even before the fat was burned. Whose portion was the fat? One idea of sacrifice, in my understanding, was that the sacrifice, the one who would bring the sacrifice, came to eat with God. And God had the blood and the fat. And I just saw this picture in my children's pastor's mind. is that God had his plate. And it says that even before the fat was burned, the servant of the priest would come. And it says he took his three-pronged fork. Now, who does that make you think of? Three-pronged fork. And it says that, this was with me in my playpen. A three-pronged fork. And it says, even before the fat was burned, the servant of the priest, and believe me, if you're a bad leader, you will always have those people who will come to you and be like you, and worse. The servant of the priest would come and say, give me the part now. And if the one who was bringing the sacrifice would humbly say, oh, let me give the Lord his portion first. No! Give it to me now or I'll take it by force. And I just pictured the Lord like dining with his people. And he was just about to eat some, take his portion of fat. And somebody pulled his plate from him. The sin of the young men was very great in the eyes of the Lord. Because they were treating the Lord's sacrifice or offering with contempt. I don't want to force stuff to apply, but have you seen individuals and groups in churches that held the much greater offering in contempt or lightly? I get scared when the cross doesn't have me in awe anymore. I get scared when I start to judge the speaker of the day. I remember as a freshman, we'd find out who was speaking at that service. Oh, it's him. Oh, boy. And we become the speaker judges. But I forgot, beloved. I thought, like, the Word of God, no matter who it came through, was supposed to judge us. You see how you get? How'd you like the worship today? Well, I didn't like it that much. Well, And you sit there, and that's what comes over us in these settings. But see, when your heart is right and you're hungry, it doesn't matter who's speaking. I do it too, and I had a mirror, and we used it for makeup, and I meant to set it in the front here that I need to hear this. Anyone who rejected the law of Moses was put to death without mercy at the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much more do they deserve to be punished? Who hold in contempt the Lord's sacrifice, who consider it an unholy thing the blood of the covenant, and trample underfoot the Son of God. See what a sacred trust it is. The Hebrew really says, when the prophet indicts Eli, he says, why do you scorn my sacrifice? The Hebrew says, why do you kick at my sacrifice? You're in the army, folks, whether you want to be or not. And I am not a spiritual warfare conference person. Those things make me sick, and I know I'm overreacting. I don't like to fight. I don't like to fight. I like to love Him. You love Him, you'll find fights. Don't go looking for fights. But they're coming. Just purpose to stay in action. Purpose to stay in action. So hard to get it across. Spirit of God, only you can bring to each heart what they need. Oh, Father. Oh, Father. Encourage them, Father. Father, please encourage the staff. Oh, Father. And all of those, Lord, who have left here and fallen. Oh, Jesus, wrap your arms around them. Oh, God, give them the miracle of getting their eyes off of men, seeing you. The worst blow is much more easy to take when you see Jesus behind it. You know who one of your best friends will be out there when you go through these times? Suffering. Suffering is what puts all the knowledge you get here and makes it life. Makes it life. They don't care out there how much you know. They don't care. They want to know can you help them? Can you help them? And you know what people help other people the most? Are broken people. Are broken. Can we just reach our hands over to the staff? Please. I do this with our camp staff all the time. I have our kids pray for our counselors. We do it for them. And just as we do, we're trusting the Father to just bless them now, immediately, for just a little kiss from Jesus on the face, so to speak, for all they're doing for you. You know? We do. Father, we bless them. Thank you for them. Keep them, Father, strong. Oh, Father. Keep their hearts, Lord, broken and burdened for you, hungry for you. Oh, Father. Oh, Father. Oh, Father. Rub your salve over them, Father. I can't believe with what is happening here, they are not taking shots and arrows that no one knows about. Father. Oh, Father. Oh, Father. Hold them, Lord Jesus, please. They're just flesh and blood. They know they're nothing and can do nothing without you. Oh, Father. Oh, Father. Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry. I can't. I know that. I want to say one more thing if I can, and I'll get you out of here. Can I show you a picture that inspired me all summer? There were two generals in the Civil War who served under President Lincoln. Well, there were many, but there were two that I think about. One was General George McClellan, who took the Army of the Potomac and made it into something. Thousands and thousands of men. But his greatest weakness was that he never went to war. All he ever did was train. He was overcautious, and he had the resources and vastly outnumbered his opponent, but he was overcautious and he never went ahead. In the time he did it, I remember, he retreated. He could have had the day, but he was overcautious. And General Lincoln, or not General Lincoln, President Lincoln, you know what he said of McClellan? If General McClellan does not wish to use his army, I should like to borrow it. Now, I've had the honor of working with Elim-type camps since 1984. And by the way, that brother that got fired with me, he's the one who got me started. Isn't that so often the case? The one who led you there and dropped you off safely, in a sense, and then go take a shot. There was another general, General Grant. And he did some real dumb stuff, apparently, in battles where he lost thousands of men, I think, in a half an hour. And it says that there were rumors going around that he was drinking and that he wasn't all there upstairs. I really relate to him, second part. And you know, I have found leading camps for years, which if I could do them every week of the year, I would. There's the closest thing to heaven that I know of. But I'd fall, and I'd fall, and I'd fail. And I knew that there were many brethren out there who could do a better job than me. And I often wondered, Lord, why don't you get somebody else? And about when people were encouraging President Lincoln to take Grant out, you know what Lincoln said? I'll never forget it. He said, I can't spare this man. He fights. McClellan didn't fight. And I have this picture of him that I carried in my briefcase all summer. And when I get discouraged, because I'm always messing up, always, and I think of that, I'm hoping Father's leaning over to Jesus on the throne. He messed up again, and Jesus says, yeah, we can't spare him. He fights. May it be so. On that day when you go down, and you will all go down, all of you. That's not the surprise. The issue is getting up. You'll all go down. So don't be stunned. And you will be shell-shocked. That's why I tried in the opening scene, as I'm trying to fly out of the time machine, from a concussion, a shell shock of a cannon explosion. You'll have it come, beloved. If you don't, I would worry. Remember, find God in it. Let's pray. Father, touch as only you can, Lord. Touch as only you can. Oh, Father. Some, Father, maybe even now are thinking of not staying for the next semester. It ain't what they thought it would be. Welcome to the war. I'm going fishing. You'll miss the resurrected Son of God. Demas hath loved this present world. He deserted me. When you take something else but God's best, you always shortchange yourself. Only you, Lord. And he who searches the hearts and minds knows the mind of the Spirit. Everything is laid bare and uncovered before the eyes of him with whom we have to do. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Let him have it. Let him have it. If you want to come up and lay before the Lord, please do. Just take your liberty. Just want to come and lay before him. I have found it's the safest place to be. The safest place to be. The temptations out there are so great. You won't make it on your own. I don't know of a better place to be. It says that Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord. And you know what the next phrase says? Besides, where the ark